Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, the 5th of August, 8 a.m. I'm joining you from Melbourne, joined today by Annie Sheehan. Delighted to welcome Annie to the show. Welcome to Conversations with Thought Leaders, a platform we've created to connect our community with amazing minds from all over the world. I'm also the Managing Director of Granite Consulting. We specialise in technology, business project solutions, as many of you will know. I have to say it's certainly the most challenging employment market I've seen in over 20 years in the industry. If you'd like to discuss what's happening out there in the world of talent, certainly very turbulent, and some of the things you can do to depression-proof your career and your business, feel free to reach out to me. So, Annie, you're joining us as well. So welcome. How are you feeling today?
Great, thanks, Dave. Very excited for this opportunity to talk to you guys.
So for those that may not know Annie, Annie's an experienced executive coach, 25 years project delivery experience from across the globe. In recent years, she's been focusing on working with executives as sponsors, delivering business critical programs and achieving sustainable change. Coupling an agile mindset with best in industry project delivery practice, Annie helps organisations deliver value. Her personal mantra being maximise life and stay sane. I think I've quoted you correctly there.
Absolutely.
She's also the author of her new book, being the courageous sponsor, and the co-author of the Amazon bestseller, Turning Ideas into Impact, Insights from the Silicon Valley. I'll hand over to you, Annie, to share some insights.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. And I'm just going to share a PowerPoint presentation with you and talk to you while I'm doing this. So just give me a moment. All right. So the session focus, there's a lot of information in the book, and I could talk about this for days. So just really this is about the impact of sponsor behaviour on the team and what that's going to do for your delivery results. So just taking you through that. Why sponsorship? A little bit of context. We are still getting high failure rates on projects today. About 40% of projects are failing and about 70% of transformation projects are failing. And given that pretty much everybody at the moment is on some form of digital transformation, that's a heck of a lot of projects that are failing. And the wastage rate is in the trillions of dollars. And the leading cause is still poor project sponsorship, cited as the leading cause of failure. Now, over the last 30 years, there have been a number of things that have improved in project delivery. So since the 1990s, for example, the project management technical and interpersonal skills has been on an exponential increase, and that's kind of leveled off a bit more recently. There are a lot more qualified project managers, and there are a lot more organisations with project management communities of practice. Since 2010, there's been global growth in agile ways of working, and that's really accelerated since 2015 with the success of a lot of the larger organisations that are relying on technology like, your Amazons, your Googles, and your Facebooks. So everybody's wanting to get in on that. And since about 2010, change management as a discipline has really taken off. And that's working much more on the human element and involving the whole organisation and the emotional journey of leading and landing change. And where the dial really hasn't shifted that much over the last 30 years is in project sponsorship and executive governance. So there are a lot of projects out there, and the ones that are a matter of public record are all of our government projects. And I'm just holding up Mikey as an example here. So for those of you from interstate and overseas, Mikey is Melbourne's version of the London Oyster card, which is the public transport touch on and touch off system, a link to your bank account, and you've just got one ticket, which is a plastic card. So this was a project that had a $1 billion budget, or slightly under $1 billion. it was 55% over budget, and it was 7 years late before they declared the project as actually complete. And in order to declare it a success, they actually had to rezone the tram system here in Melbourne to everything being in zone 1 because they couldn't get the technology to work. Very frustrating for a lot of people. This was one of the projects that the Victorian Ombudsman had a look at. She had a slate of projects that she was looking at and looking at patterns and trends for why projects were running over budget and why there was so much waste. And she came up with 26 recommendations. And given that the organisations couldn't implement all 26, she was asked, well, what are the most important 1 or 2? And she said it's absolutely, if you invest in project sponsorship and then in governance and oversight, you will see the biggest material difference. And from additional research that I've seen, the reason is that the sponsor is the one who is the biggest influencer, and I call them a snowplow. They are the ones that can get that biggest influence, that make that biggest impact, the broadest and the fastest. So who is the sponsor in this context? Now, they could be called many things in your organisation. They might be called, they might be the CEO. They might be called a product owner. They might be called a business owner. But they are the person who is owning that vision. They're responsible for the investment funding. They actually care about the outcome. They're owning the outcome and they receive the benefits. And we've got Mr. Musk and Mr. Jobs here. They don't have to be entrepreneurs, but they absolutely have to be there championing and owning that business outcome. And they need to work in a respectful partnership with their project manager. And the project manager is supposed to be the primary person who realises the vision on behalf of the sponsor. They're looking after the team. They're managing all of the resources. They're making sure that those deliverables are served up to the sponsor, and they're making sure that the business gets the handover. And what I've noticed in interviewing many project managers is that lots of them feel far more responsibility than they should, and they can overcompensate for their sponsors, especially aggressive or absent ones. So if you've had the good fortune to have had a great sponsor, and it'd be interesting to see in the chat as well, the impact of great project sponsorship, it's really, does it they really need to link to strong strategic vision, have the customer at the heart, we're taking for granted that the teams are technically competent and that there's a level of strong leadership. So I just want to take you through some of the research that I've done, and there are many different types of sponsor. And during my research on sponsorship, I identified several types that exhibited similar characteristics. And then what I did was I grouped them into sponsor personas or archetypes. And I chose different birds to identify the personas so that they could be readily identifiable and easy to remember. So I'll just take you through those fairly rapidly, and then we'll get into the impact side of things. All right. The first sponsor type that it just gets a mention in my book, but we don't actually explore them more broadly, is the peacock. Their defining behaviour is self-centred narcissism. And it would be interesting to know how many people have worked with peacock sponsors. I know one person in particular seems to attract these more regularly than others. So if we talk about a Penny the Peacock, there's one that I've worked with. She was a know-it-all. She dismissed the skills of others. She never listened. She had no people skills. And she would spend more time actually derailing the project than she did with getting on with it. So that was interesting. She ended up getting marched out of the organisation, and a lot of toxic sponsors, that's what happens. But their impact on the team is that they anger and stress the team, and instead of actually enabling them to move forward, the team just feels angry and talks about quitting. next sponsor who I've seen a lot of is the aggressive magpie. And one sponsor that I work with was, we'll just call him Max. He was scary and unapproachable to most of the team. He was fantastic when there was a hard decision that had to be made. And the thing was that the team were never certain which version they were going to get. So the impact that he had on the team was that they were stressed at times, but they weren't sure. They just found him unapproachable, and they felt fearful and isolated. But great when they were in a crisis. The next one that I know a lot of you have seen, I call Oscar the Ostrich. Their defining characteristic is avoidance. And there's one that I know, lovely guy, but we actually didn't know that he was a sponsor until the end of the project. And the two project managers involved felt abandoned, and that impacted the project with a significant budget overrun, and it impacted the career for one of the project managers and the sponsor for at least 12 months. So that was pretty challenging. And when they're not there, one of the key roles of the sponsor is about active decision making, and you're not seeing that leadership and decision making happening, and the team feels abandoned and isolated. And again, it would be interesting to see how many people have been dealing with ostrich sponsors. Then we start moving into our courageous sponsors. So the first sponsor to introduce you to is our duck sponsor. They are typically new to sponsorship, or they really want to learn it. They might have done a project before, but they've been an accidental sponsor, but they're curious and they're thirsty to learn. So one that I've worked with, we'll just call her Debbie. She was a first-time sponsor. She had an experienced PM who coached her on her sponsorship duties, and she really listened. She asked great questions. She became an effective sponsor very quickly, and she still talks about that experience today and how well it worked. And she went on to be a really effective Eagle sponsor that you'll see shortly. So the impact with those new first-time sponsors is that they actively work with the team, and you start to get that real team spirit and collaboration, and the team actually step in to coach the sponsor and lift them up. And the team really feels respected and valued, and it really feels like co-creation and ownership. And I'm seeing more of this as well with the new product owner roles that are coming out in Agile delivery. The target state that I'm hoping for all sponsors is what I call the effective Eagle. And these are the kind of sponsors that have pretty strong leadership skills, good people skills. They ask good questions. They make decisions quickly. One who I'll just call Edward the Eagle. He had sponsor training. He regularly goes into bat for the team. He has ongoing sponsor coaching from a project management coach and other sponsors and execs and other project managers. He invites regular feedback from the team. And he's been a full-time sponsor for over 2 years now, and has regularly had his program running with great momentum, has managed to get budget increases when they were looking for budget haircuts, and provides that direction, protection and order for the team to operate safely. So the impact is really the team feels that they have got that, they're in line with the clear vision, and that they're protected, that they can ask questions. And if you can imagine that effective Eagle, they are the person, flying over the landscape with their eye on the prize. But when they need to, they swoop down and get involved in the detail. But they don't stay for too long on the ground. When the thing's done, they're up and they fly again more broadly. And our last type of sponsor is our wise owl. One that I'd like to talk about, we'll just call him, Tim. He started off as a duck sponsor, and he got some training. He worked in an organisation with really fantastic organisational maturity, and he's been in the fortunate position that he's never actually had a bad project or anything go horribly wrong. So he got some training, he got some coaching from some other sponsors, and then he really loved it and really went in with the team. And then after 2 or 3 years, he became the go-to person for people for coaching, and he coached a whole bunch of other sponsors and project managers. So the big difference between the owl and the eagle is you need to have been an eagle sponsor for a little while before you can really be an owl. And they're not just protecting and providing direction. They are in there and they are coaching the team, and they are coaching beyond the team so that you are paying it forward, if you like, and growing the capability. And again, the team feels respected and valued. So those are our overall sponsor personas, our narcissistic peacock. Now, they can't be counselled, and my strongest advice to you is if you're working with one of them, try and get off the project or get out of the organisation. It might be a bit more challenging in today's time, but they can't be coached. But the rest of them can be coached. I've worked with a lot of magpies in particular and a few ostriches that with a bit of coaching and a bit of empathy, they really move up the curve well.
Annie, how can you actually gauge a sponsor's potential for engagement? And I'm particularly interested in this new remote world we're in. You know, how can you manage that in this world?
Okay. The most useful thing, whether you're in the remote world or you're in the physical world, actually asking a sponsor, what does the project mean to them? Why do they want to sponsor it? And then listening to what they're saying about the vision. So one example with the chap that I was working with who was taking over the sponsorship of a project from another sponsor, he wasn't actually that interested in it. So I actually put him on the back foot and said, so why do you want to sponsor this? Why should anybody support you? What's going on? And actually, in the space of about 10 minutes, he was able to articulate what the business case meant to him, what it was going to do for his business, what it was going to do for his customers. And he really shifted gears really quickly. So if they can move like that and you can get that level of engagement, that's a really good indicator. If they can't come up with any reason why they want to sponsor it or that's been thrust upon them, ask more questions and maybe raise some concerns, because they need to have the buy-in, because otherwise they're not going to make the time, because we all make time for the things that we like.
Fantastic. We've got quite a lot of questions coming in, but I've just got a quick comment from your book around Silicon Valley and turning ideas into impact. You speak about connecting with your inner child. Can you give us a quick sentence around what you mean by that, please?
Sure. I think we can take ourselves way too seriously, and it's good to have a bit of fun. And if I look at Google and Facebook, I've had the privilege of going to their headquarters in San Francisco. They've got play areas for their staff. And Google, for example, has got a ball pit. Facebook's got an entire garden. And people, I think, lose their inhibitions when they get in touch with their inner child. And they can be a bit more silly and playful. And, one of the things, I've got a couple of little props here. I've got a little rubber chicken. Got some on my shelf there. I use those in my facilitation. And one of the teams that I work with, our mascot was Yoda. And we used to have a fluffy Yoda that we passed around the team. And we started the day with a bit of lightness with our stand-ups. And it didn't take away from the seriousness of the work, but it was relaxing and it was a bit of fun. And, that's where creativity comes out of.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned Google. Actually, Eric Schmidt's book, The $1 Trillion Coach, is fantastic and explores, quite a lot of the themes we're talking about today. So Ignacio Inausti asked Annie, what would you say are some more of the required attributes for an effective sponsor?
Probably the two most important that I talk about is championing and advocating for the project. So really embracing it and sharing that vision with a broad stakeholder group and with the customers and really believing in it, because that creates a massive amount of momentum. Making decisions and owning the decisions. So if we take Dan Andrews as an example, he's been vilified in the press recently for making a decision about employing a private security guard firm to look out for people who are in quarantine, and he chose to do that rather than employ the Australian Defence Forces. Now the optics look better on having a private security firm back in May. Obviously it went wrong and we're in a massive lockdown here, but I admire his courage. He's owning and standing by his decisions, even though it wasn't a great one. So those are probably the two big ones. There's a huge list of sponsor duties, but those to me are the two most important. I'm happy to talk to you offline, by the way, Ignacio, about any of those extras.
We've got time for a couple more questions, and privately I'm a bit disappointed about the politicking between a local Labour government and a federal Liberal government, but we won't go there. Lani Beer asks, do you think sponsors are phasing out and product owners are more relevant in today's world?
I think it depends on the organisation. Where I'm seeing the shift, I am seeing a lot more people coming into the product owner space from the business side, and I think that that's one of the opportunities. And I think that's would solve a lot of problems, actually. And I think that the title sponsor is probably diminishing, and I think product owners are moving into that space. And I like it, actually, because it's giving business owners a genuine reason to get more involved in projects and co-create with delivery teams.
We're about out of time. Annie, thank you so much for your time this morning. See you all next time. Ladies and gentlemen, Annie Sheehan.